So welcome, Babs. Really looking forward to the discussion in the panel. Babs, are you with us?
I am indeed.
Oh,
Sorry.
Good.
Just joining as a panelist. But thank you very much for that. Thanks, Patricia. And thanks for a great setup for our panel, Marie-Claire. And finally, welcome to everyone for this panel, where we'll be covering one of the key questions facing our industry today. Why is standardization and certification important to the development of retail media? And today I'm joined by a great group of panelists representing a range of diverse views across the commerce landscape. So we have Darren Jacobs, who is EMEA Sales Director for Zitcha, Georgina Holledge, Business Director for Capture and Plan Apps, and finally, Stephen Shepherd, Head of Strategy and Consulting for Tesco Media. So I guess let's start by acknowledging the rapid growth of retail media. But I think also it's natural to expect some growing pains as the sector evolves. And the lack of industry-wide standards and certification does mean that we face a level of fragmentation and scalability challenges. And this will likely lead to a lack of innovation as companies continue to build their own solutions for their own siloed environments. And without the common metrics and consistent reporting, it's going to be difficult for advertisers to compare performance and scale their campaigns effectively. So I guess a level of standardization is kind of natural and is something that as an industry, we think will be essential to solve some of these challenges. So with that said, I guess let's start off with a few questions for this panel. And first of all, and I think Georgina, I'll start with you on this one. But first of all, can you tell us what challenges you're facing in your business and how standardization of measurement helps you provide solutions to those challenges?
Yeah, I mean, coming from Capture and Plan Apps, where we've been in the retail media industry since 2008, we've been here a long time, and we've worked with a number of different stakeholders within the client set that we have. Historically, that's been shop marketeers. More and more, it's becoming digital focused with everything that's happening with first-party data. But in terms of stepping on from that and starting to build the credibility around retail media with brand directors, marketing directors, standardization will enable us to fast track that, to get it in front of those people and drive that credibility through proving that it works and that it's worth investing in. At the moment, brands don't necessarily have a means of comparing apples with apples when they're working across different RMNs. So having that standardization removes any kind of perception around marking your own homework. And it takes it away from kind of this black box mentality. And interesting what Marie-Claire was saying about the incrementality measurement piece that's coming down the line. That's going to be absolutely critical to enabling growth in this industry, because that will give brands the confidence to go back to their businesses and say, we should be spending in this space, and look what it's driving for us from an incrementality perspective. So yeah, I think it will build a lot of trust within the industry. That's what's needed.
Great answer. And I'm going to pick up on one of the points you said, which always makes me smile when we all sit here and think about this brand new industry of retail media, and then people like you come up and say we've been doing this since 2008.
Stephen as well.
Yeah, I'm not even talking about how long Stephen's been on this side of the fence, but yeah, it's always an interesting one. But Stephen, over to you. You know, obviously, as Georgina said, you've been in this game for a long time. How do you guys approach standardization and measurement?
Yeah, so I think I totally agree with everything that Georgina said. It's critical that we're benchmarking apples with apples. I think there's probably 2 points that I would raise. I think the first bit around standardization is within the industry, we need to consider the categories. So actually, it's not quite as easy as sometimes we can consider, because you could have beer, wines and spirits, or you could have fresh, where actually purchase cycles are different. So there's the piece around how do we standardize at a category level? And then I think the other bit that we're seeing is as critical is omni-channel. So again, within retail media, there's a lot of complexity. standardization allows us to remove some of the complexity and measure apples with apples across multiple channels. Now, that could be digital, it could be store, and that's something as an industry we obviously want to drive and support as much as possible, with the kind of consideration that each of the clients will have different ways of measuring things as a business as well. So they're the kind of two lenses that I'd put on it. But yeah, critical for the industry, critical that we scale together and kind of, you know, we go on that journey, I'd suggest.
Again, great answer, and very well put about, you know, we talk about standardization across the industry, but you know there is, when we look at it on a category by category basis, being able to compare down to that granular level again is going to be essential. And Darren, coming from the tech side, how do you guys kind of approach that same challenge?
Yeah, I mean, we kind of sit in between the brands and the agencies and help facilitate this whole process. So from our point of view, I think it's really important that we kind of help that facilitation, making sure that we're allowing the retailers to show all the right metrics, the standardizations, and allow that apple for apple comparison. Interestingly as well, I think from a vendor point of view as well, if there is standardization across the industry, and obviously all the vendors and there's tech solutions are kind of adhering to that. From the retailer point of view, it allows them to go further upstream and actually assess, you know, is this RMP as challenging as this one, and allows you guys, you know, from a Tesco point of view, for example, to really compare, you know, Zitcha versus the other platforms out there, and really drive performance from their solutions as well, which is also just as important, sort of further upstream, I guess.
No, indeed, and I mean, I guess you know we're all in agreement. Standardization is key. It's something that we do have to adopt as an industry. And it kind of leads me to the next question, being, you know, so how do we encourage that standardization? How do we encourage the adoption of these industry standards? You know, the great work that Marie-Claire just showed, that the IAB is leading, but what else is there that will really help drive the adoption of these standards across the industry? And I'll start with you, Darren.
Yeah, again, I mean, just following on from my point just now, you know, we kind of sit in the middle, and it's kind of up to the solutions point of view to really facilitate it. You know, there's some key things that you need to kind of look at, you know, the inconsistent methodologies, limited transparency, and the fragmentation of insights and all that type of thing. And, you know, as much as, you know, it's up to us to kind of help pull all that together and make it easy for the retailers and also the brands to really kind of get a lens across all of that. What exactly that looks like, I think that is the wider conversation, but we can really help drive that adoption and uptake just by allowing it to kind of happen and bringing it all together.
Indeed. And same to you, Georgina.
I think it starts with transparency, because standardization is really tricky. It was tricky with other areas of digital. It's even harder to do it within retail for all the reasons that Stephen talked about and all the nuances that come with that, plus the sheer volume of players in the market now, and trying to bring all of those guys together.
138 apparently, as we heard today.
Yes, there's a lot to muddle about, but yeah, I think from a brand side and their perspective, if they in the meantime can get the transparency from the RMNs and get all of the data with any kind of fluff around it, they can start to understand how they standardize within their businesses and what good looks like to them. And then from there, that can help actually influence the adoption of standardization further up. Because if these big brands have their own means of doing it, and a lot of them are, I know Mars were developing their own platform in-house, I think it actually needs to be a two-way street. We're looking a lot at the retailers and, you know, the tech guys for this, but the brands actually have some really good ideas around this as well. So it does feel like it needs to be a collaborative effort to get there.
Yeah, again, the collaboration is I think another theme that sort of permeated the discussions all through the various panels today. And Stephen, what about you? How do you think we drive this adoption across the industry?
I think the first thing to recognise is that retailers sit on a goldmine of closed loop measurement. So there is this piece, and often with that comes complexity of actually how do you deliver against that. I think the bit about definitions is absolutely key, that even if retailers are doing things in different ways, at least we need to be very transparent as to what they are. In terms of when we think about omni-channel and the complexity there, we're often driving to that outcome. So that is often a brand outcome or a performance outcome. So it could be something like iROAS, or it could be something like customer lifetime value. And if we have the right frameworks in place, it allows the retail media marketplace to drive to those outcomes and actually standardize in that way. Because if we start with the right base in place, as we move into the complexity, which is ultimately what we're looking at often is brand and performance metrics, that allows us to do it. But we can't do that without actually having the basics in place. So I think it's in everyone's interest to deliver, standardization in that way. And certainly, I think, certainly we're striving to push in that direction. And I can see the industry as well. So I think this is a really good conversation to have, and something that, is evolving and will keep evolving over the next year or so.
I think there's sorry, Babs, there's I think you touched on it a little bit there, Stephen. I think there's a responsibility for probably the more established sort of players within the market to really drive that and to make sure that they're leading by example when it comes to that. So, IAB really standardization, everybody kind of adheres to it, and it kind of sets a precedent and a best practice so that when new entrants come into the market, it's very easy for them to kind of go, right, okay, well, this is the baseline, this is what we need to achieve from a standardization and a measurement point of view. And so everybody kind of starts off, I guess, on a level playing field. So there's that baseline across everybody.
Yeah, and I think we've seen it work in other areas with the IAB. So, for example, TCF is something that was, initiated through IAB Europe and actually has had wide adoption throughout the industry. So I think there are really good precedents of standardization working, and, you can see that the industry is really working in this space for, because this is what advertisers and clients require. So it's something to really push for, which I think comes back into this performance and brand metrics, which certainly a lot of those conversations lead into that space, but you can't deliver that without having, the base in place. So if it's attribution windows and the such like, how are you being very transparent about that and giving the information to the client so it makes sense for their brand as well?
Yeah, I think it's such an interesting topic, and the nuances are going to be key to really understand. And it is, Darren, to your point, it will need kind of leaders kind of driving us forward and setting the baseline. But also, I think there's got to be a kind of common agreement on a lot of those metrics. So Stephen, you talk about the attribution windows, and the attribution windows within categories can be wildly different, not to talk of across the a whole retailer's kind of stock line. So it's really trying to wonder who are going to be those leaders who are going to set the benchmark, and then who are the industry bodies like the IAB that we can lean on to really kind of drive that adoption and make sure that the adherence is kind of is applied across the industry effectively. So yeah, it's definitely one of these topics that I know we're incredibly interested in, and it's great to see these conversations, more of these conversations happening over the course of time as we go along. But it does kind of lead on to the next question as well, because we're talking about standardization and the need for standardization and what effectively what value that can bring within the industry. But also, what else do you think or how else do you think standardization can drive innovation and more efficiency within retail media? And I'll start with you on this one, Stephen.
Yeah, sure. I think there's a big piece. Efficiency. We've done a lot of work with self-serve. So we have a solution called Sphere, which allows clients to gain insight, build audiences and activate across different platforms. So it could be Meta, it could be on-site media, and obviously we work with sponsored media as well. I think there's a big bit here around this piece of insight. So historically, we've worked with insight. We understand frequency of purchase. We understand a lot of the metrics that sit around customers. And actually, a lot of that can then start moving into the measurement space. So if you standardize what you're expecting through that, through attribution windows, that's where you can start to optimize. You can really start to understand campaign performance. And it can be benchmarking apples with apples across retail media, but it's also understanding multi-channel and actually how that's performing within an ecosystem. Because what we're seeing with retail media is there are not so many just one campaigns, one digital campaign. Actually, it's an omni-channel play. And this is where standardization does get so important, because actually you need to understand your store customers, your online customers, your research online shopping store customers. You need to understand which customers are lapsing, which customers are new to brand. And this is where a lot of the innovation sits, but you need to have that framework before you can start working in that way. So we've done a lot of work, which is almost, I'd suggest, putting the control in the hands of the CPG or agency to actually understand what's happening, be it through a product such as the Shop, which is a dunnhumby Insight solution, or Sphere, which is a media solution. So you can start building that capability out.
Yeah, it's really interesting what you're saying, Stephen, about it being omnichannel, because in this world where everything is so fragmented in the advertising industry, retail media really is that kind of that red thread that can connect your whole campaign. And you've kind of got this double-edged sword of, right, we've got loads of data on these people, and that is very complex and a lot more than we would ordinarily necessarily have within other categories. But then on the other side of it, where it can do that brand job, how do we also standardize it to align with what ATL agencies are talking about and what brand people are talking about? It needs to have its own area of standardization, but then also align to what has been going on in the wider industry within all of the channels we can activate it in. So there's a real balance, and there's a lot of stakeholders that need to be involved to understand what the best route is to standardization.
Yeah, definitely. Just kind of building on that, I think there is this piece as well that often the starting point is obviously digital, but retailers now have digital signage. So you're benchmarking against digital out of home. Potentially they have store radio. So again, radio's been around for a long time. And actually, or it could be integrations with CTV providers, ITV, Channel 4, Sky. And certainly, again, building from the base up into actually how do you measure for these partners? How do you have the right outcomes that you're looking for? If you're looking at Sky TV, what's the outcome that you're measuring against versus digital signage in store or digital signage out of store? So there's bringing that together in an omni-channel measurement solution is critical, and it's certainly, you know, where the industry is heading. But we need to manage that complexity, because you're pretty much touching almost every aspect of media that's existed for the last 50 odd years. So I think it's a super interesting challenge, and one that there's huge value in.
Then the other thing to consider as well, like we've spoken a lot about the standardization of measurement, but from a retail media network point of view, the standardization of creative is probably just as important as well, driving innovation. So if, you know, Tesco's and all the other RMNs sort of adhere to IAB best standards when it comes to creative, it can allow other sort of innovative sort of creative partners to come in and work a lot closer with the RMNs to create something that's a little bit more immersive, I think, rather than at the moment there's a lot of statics and sort of that sort of creative, which will allow much more video and more innovative and more immersive experience, which can only enhance the shopper's experience, I think, online. And obviously with the store becoming more digitized as well, there'll be ways to obviously translate that into the store as well. So I think it goes more than just obviously to measurement. It goes into the sort of creative as well. I think it's just as important and probably a bit sexier as well.
Yeah,
indeed. And you know, I think you're all kind of touching on the sort of wider implications of standardization and what that could bring to retail media and commerce media for the industry. You know, we're talking about the effect and the benefits that it could have to the industry, how people work, how buyers interact with the various RMNs, how they interact with the various tech platforms. But Stephen, to your point, you know, that kind of standardization, the industry standardization, has to take into account how we look at this from, as you say, the omnichannel perspective, and all of the other different platforms, all of the other different sort of players in the ecosystem that also feed into the wider commerce media activity that a brand is planning, or how they're trying to achieve their kind of core goal. So, I mean, it's a super fascinating topic, and I think, you know, it's great that we're at the start. It's great that these conversations are going, but I think being kind of cognizant of those implications and how those wider implications impact what we're doing is going to be key to this overall discussion. I know we've only got sort of our sort of 5-6 minutes, so I'll jump to the last question, because I think it's kind of an interesting one as we kind of future gaze a little bit. But in terms of you know, how as we're talking about how the landscape evolves, you know, what steps do you think we should take at this point to ensure that standardization and certification remain relevant as things continue to emerge and new technology comes into the fore, for retailers, for buyers in the ecosystem as well? And I'll start with you, Georgina.
I think what we need to be very aware of is not just, we're already working in a very complex environment. So the tech that enables that needs to be as simple as possible, as in you can plug in as many different things, there's not too many restrictions, because that is what enables the innovation and enables you to do more and to keep up with these emerging technologies, and to make sure that you're set up for future success and not just what is happening now. And I think, you know, especially with, you know, everything that's going on with AI at the moment, that's got a huge role to play. But we definitely just need to keep our eye on what is the basic, like the simplest way to do this that we can build upon, rather than trying to build a very complex model to meet a very complex task.
I think the baby steps is the foundation. And then it's kind of like, as you said, Georgina, it's the ongoing reviews, the strong governance, and what's the process behind that can help start from this point. I think the reassuring thing is, this is overall a good thing, because it just shows that retail media as it is today is obviously growing up, and it's a huge opportunity. And, you know, programmatic went through this, search went through this, every kind of new wave kind of goes through this process. And I think that one of the main things is it's that, and I think I spoke about it earlier, is that inclusivity for everybody within the ecosystem, to make sure that it starts from the top and it filters all the way down. So it does promote new entrants into the market, it reduces the barriers to entry, and makes it a lot easier for the category to grow even more, I think.
Indeed. And Stephen, over to you.
I'm going to call out two things, I think, and one of them has been, I think, since I've worked in this industry, the first thing we think about is the customer. So I think as things evolve, there's a lot of complexity, as we said, come into the market, but I'd always be thinking about, when we're measuring, we're actually measuring a customer, and, you know, how media has kind of enhanced their customer journey. So I think there's one, thinking about the customer, which I'd say comes back to simplification, because it can be tempting to quickly scale, and actually, how do you ensure that as you're building this, you're building it alongside the customer and the customer experience? The second bit, and I think it's simplification as well, is having the right data strategy. So again, it can be very tempting to build up fragmented ecosystems where you're solving a problem in one area and solving another problem in another area, but not joining those things together. So I think within that kind of how it evolves, it needs to evolve around the customer, and it needs to evolve in a simplified way, which is a data strategy, which actually is talking about how are you engaging in the right way with a customer, and then measuring on the back of that. So I think that's something that we kind of all need to keep in our mind as we build this through, that standards are built by the customers who interact with media, and it needs to be good for them.
No, indeed. And it's great that you would mention the customer, because I know we when we think about these things, we think about we tend to think about the tech first. And it's right, we can build this tech and it will be, this amazing solution that will work for this particular challenge. But ultimately, we all have the same aim in that we are both, kind of professionals in the industry, but ultimately we are all consumers in our own right. And, if that, whatever the standardization and the kind of metrics we put in place, if that doesn't match the natural consumer behavior or the way that users and consumers interact with retailers and RMNs, that in itself will be a barrier. So I think it's a great point to kind of end on, to think, whatever we're doing, having the kind of customer as the central kind of hub as we the central hub as we think about the developments that we're pushing through. But everyone, I wanted to just send out a huge thanks for, again, participation in this panel. I'll take a couple of quick seconds just to summarize my thoughts of what we've said, and I think the kind of 3 key takeaways that I want to pull out from the discussion this afternoon is kind of collaboration is key. This isn't going to be solved by any one partner or any one company kind of leading on the solutions to standardization and certification. Having kind of leaders within the space, kind of setting the baseline and understanding or setting a common set of metrics that new entrants and current participants all adhere to and sort of make a reality for the industry as a whole. And then finally, kind of the simplification, because ultimately, the more complexity that we add into it, the more kind of fragmentation that we add into it, again, will just lead to more stumbling blocks and more roadblocks and make this harder for us as an industry to adopt. And then I will throw in your final point, Stephen, around the consumer, kind of thinking around who the consumer are and what we're actually delivering for them. So again, thank you very much for your time, guys, and thank you for everyone for listening to us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I worry we are at the end of this great debate. So thank you to our last panel. And I want to hand over to Jason for a short wrap up of our last 2 hours.
Thank you so much, Patricia. And as always, appreciate your amazing hosting skills. Thank you so much, Babs, Georgina, Darren, and Stephen. That was a fantastic discussion to close out our event. Very insightful to hear your views on why standardization and certification are so vital to the development of retail media. Is a truly fitting way to round off the day. Definitely based on all of the work that we've been doing, the update that Marie-Claire gave earlier as well. It really is the beating heart of what we're doing here on retail and commerce media with IAB Europe. So as we wrap up today's great debate on retail media, I want to extend a heartfelt thank you to all of our incredible speakers, our moderators and panelists for sharing your knowledge and perspectives. And of course, to all of you who joined us today, thank you for your engagement, questions, enthusiasm throughout. We in particular on the poll with the Oxford style debate, that was very, very exciting. The tension waiting for the numbers to come in at the end. So today we've explored the real momentum building across the retail media landscape, from breaking down silos and driving in-store innovation to the evolving importance of incrementality and measurement and the critical need for pan-European standardization. It's very clear that retail media continues to be one of the most exciting and fast-moving areas in our industry. And with collaboration and shared best practices, we can collectively shape its growth into more scalable, transparent, and effective channel for all stakeholders. So I really do hope that you're leaving today with new insights, with inspiration, and definitely some new ideas to take back into your work. I know that I definitely have. I've been making a lot of notes across all of the sessions. So yeah, thank you, everyone. Selfishly, it helps me a lot as well. And at IAB Europe, we do remain committed to supporting this growth and collaboration within the digital advertising community. So if you'd like to continue these conversations or get more involved in our initiatives, please don't hesitate to reach out to our team. That includes myself, that includes Patricia, obviously Marie-Claire, obviously Ioana as well. And a very, very quick reminder before we close, I'd just like to highlight a few opportunities to continue your retail media journey with us. So first and foremost, up on the screen, we have the IAB Europe Attitudes to Retail Media in Europe survey for 2025. So those of you familiar with us know that we run this on an annual basis. So we would love for you to take part in this. This survey is aimed at buyers, the advertisers and agencies and retailers to understand current investment levels, usage and experiences with retail media and how these are expected to evolve. So you can scan the QR code on the screen now to learn more and get involved. This one's really, really important for us. And, like I say constantly in every single monthly catch-up that we have, our survey and the corresponding report that comes out off the back of the survey gets cited in a lot of industry chat. The insight that we get from this piece of work is really, really important, because it comes from all of you guys, people who are actually involved in the industry on a day-to-day basis. So the more of you that do get involved, the more valuable the insights. So yeah, please do get involved in that one. Next up, we have Retail Media Essentials course. So this is taking place online on Tuesday, the 8th of July. So you can stay ahead in the evolving retail media landscape by gaining a clear and practical understanding of retail media. So whether you're just starting out or looking to sharpen your knowledge, this course is designed to give you the foundational tools to navigate this fast-growing space. And I think it's the opportunity to be instructed and educated by the very best in the business. I think we have Colin Lewis, who runs the course along with our very own Yara Daher as well. And the next, very important not to forget, our flagship event at IAB Europe, that's Interact 2025, and that is happening next month, this May in Brussels. So you can join industry leaders, brands, agencies, and publishers from across Europe as we dive into the big ideas shaping the future of digital advertising. This is going to be a good one. I'm actually going to be there. I'm running a session on retail media in Brussels, so I just booked my travel to Brussels. So I'm very, very excited. I think we also have Colin Lewis doing a session on retail media, and Marie-Claire an update on everything that we're doing from a standardization perspective. So, a good triple threat there from a retail and commerce media perspective. Finally, we're thrilled to announce the first ever edition of the IAB Europe Retail Media Impact Summit. And that is happening on the 24th of September in Amsterdam, as you'll see from the picture of the canal there. So this is a bold new leadership event. It's designed to define the future of retail media across Europe and beyond. So it's a one-day summit. It's going to bring together around 150 senior decision makers from visionary retailers, innovative advertisers to pioneering tech partners and policy shapers as well. So if you fancy joining us in September in Amsterdam for a really deep and innovative session, please do scan the QR code that you see on your screen right now to learn more. So finally, thank you to all of you, the attendees, for tuning in today. We really appreciate your time. Thank you once again, and we look forward to seeing you at our upcoming events. Until then, take good care and see you soon. Have an amazing day.
Have a great day.